So in probably the first video that I made, I talked about how my incentive structures kind of feel off, and I think a lot of us are in the same boat where we'll like do something that's extraneous, whether it's physically extraneous or just like emotionally or mentally tiring and taxing, and we end up getting home, let's say, and being like, oh, well, I deserve a drink. Or we have dinner and we're like, well, I deserve dessert, or whatever it might be. I deserve to fuck off for 2 hours and watch TV and do nothing. And like, I don't think there's anything wrong with doing those things at all, but there is something kind of messed up about the way that we see these things, because while they are nice little indulgences, it's important to remember that too much of it, I mean, period, basically any of it is not necessarily good for us, but too much of it is definitely bad for us. And it's actually, too much of it is actually not that much. And especially in like the diets that we have as Americans, often it's normalized to have like a lot of sugar. It's normalized to drink very often, and it's normalized to veg out after a long day. And a lot of this is like not strictly our faults, because we do have a food system that like intentionally makes food as addictive as possible, and we also have a work system that oftentimes like has us do a bunch of unnecessary work or stay for hours that aren't really necessary to get the job done. And so for us to feel drained at the end of a long day and not really have that mental capacity to like pursue a passion or practice a skill is totally understandable and not necessarily our fault. But I think back to a time where it wasn't that long ago, but I had seen a few videos on the carnivore diet, the one where you just eat meat and that's it. I mean, electrolytes, I was drinking coffee and water, but it's basically just different kinds of meat. And people were saying, you know, how great it is. Other people were saying how bad it is. People were saying it's not something you could do long term, this, that, and the other. And, you know, we're constantly assaulted with different point of views, and it's really easy to fall into like an analysis paralysis if you don't have a clear answer to whether or not something's good or bad, and you might be interested in trying it out, but you're too scared to hurt yourself, whatever it might be. And we end up never really making those decisions a lot of times. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to just try it out and see if it worked for me and my body. So I told myself I'll do 30 days of this and then check in with myself after 30 days and see if it was like a good or bad thing. And I think, you know, from how I felt, not necessarily getting blood work done, from how I felt, it was pretty good. After about a week and a half, I noticed pretty consistent high energy levels. I felt sharper. I felt like I was just in a better mood overall. And my inflammation, I have inflammation in my knees that's pretty bad, basically went away. My knees stopped hurting completely. And so it showed me, I'm like, all right, well, it could be the fact that I'm just eating meat, and the meat is like what's doing me good, because I was pretty sure that I was getting not enough protein in my diet previously. But it could also be that the exclusion, cutting out the sugar and alcohol from my diet and carbohydrates in general, was the biggest like contributor to my better feeling, to my lack of inflammation and all these things. I think that's probably the more obvious answer, and I know after looking into it a little more and talking to a few people, like, you could actually mess up your kidneys. I'm pretty sure it's your kidneys, it might be your liver, from having too much of an excess of protein consistently. And so I'm not going to go back to that diet, but I think it was easier for me to do that because the diet was so extreme, and there was really only a handful of things I could eat. And when I didn't have to do that mental calculus of like, is this healthy? What have I eaten lately? Is this gonna like throw me off? All this kind of stuff. It was just very simple. It was already decided ahead of time. It was, I'm only eating this, and that's it. And I realize I thrive in those kind of rigid situations and structures. And I don't think I want that to be the case, but it just kind of is what it is. And I think it's something that I have to work with for myself, and I could work on changing that as an individual, but I think for where I'm at right now, maybe that change will come later. What I need to change right now, what I'm feeling is like the difference of when I was on carnivore for that short time, how good I felt mentally and emotionally, and like seeing my body get healthier was awesome. Versus now, I've been on the standard American diet, the SAD diet, where everything is just filled with sugar and carbohydrates are kind of like the biggest thing that we eat, and alcohol and drinking is just like a very normal thing. And I could feel the difference on my emotions, because by all respects, things in life, I mean, don't get me wrong, there's plenty of things going on in the world that are probably impacting me, at least in some kind of way. The world can really seem like a terrible place right now when you look at the news and you see everything that's going on. A lot of people are suffering. But in my personal life, really things couldn't get much better. I mean, I could always be making a little bit more money. It's almost like never quite enough. And we can get into that at another point. But the idea being, like, when I look around at everything around me, like, I got a hammock in the backyard with these trees, and this is awesome. It makes me realize, like, I shouldn't be feeling down, and I shouldn't be feeling like slow and groggy and just kind of lacking motivation and all these things. So if that's the case, and I knew that, like, I was in a shittier job when I was doing carnivore, and that's probably only the main difference, but I felt way better before, back then too. So this is all like a long, convoluted way of me saying that I'm making the commitment to myself to cut out refined sugars, and that'll be basically white sugar, processed sugar that comes in like crystals, honey as a sweetener, and cutting out foods that are like highly processed that contain that kind of thing. I'll still eat fruit, even that'll be in moderation though, but cutting out sugars, not drinking, and I think severely limiting my carbohydrate intake. At least any carbs that come from like grains. I think any vegetable carbs are going to be totally fine, but doing it for 30 days, starting tomorrow. I'll use this line of communication on the platform as like a accountability check-in, and also giving progress updates to how I'm feeling. I know it's going to be great. It's just, if I know that I operate in this like black or white area, the gray zone of like, well, I should be able to choose when I have a dessert or when I have a drink, it's just not working for me. So wanted to say that I think everybody would kind of benefit from eating less sugar, and that's obvious statement of the year, but I'll let you guys know how it goes for me, and if any of you guys want to try and do the same or ask any questions or check in, I'll be here to answer them. Thanks, guys.